I do believe it's 2 o'clock. The February meeting of the Suffolk City Board of Zoning Appeals will now come to order. Mr. Skinner, if you'll call the roll, please.
Richard Eslick.
Present.
Peter C. Jackson.
Present.
Daniel Froman. Melissa Venable.
Present.
Howard Benton.
Present.
We have a quorum.
And we have a quorum. Thank you for that. All right, our next matter of business is the approval of the minutes. And our last meeting was in October. Are there any corrections to the minutes as presented?
No, sir.
If not, can I have a motion for approval?
Motion for approval.
Can I hear a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes, and all opposed say no. All right, thank you for that. I'm not aware of any old business this afternoon. Our public hearings are 30 minutes in length, 10 minutes for the proponents, 15 minutes for opponents, 5 minutes for rebuttal by the proponents. Public hearings are videotaped and are made available for public viewing. Our first public hearing this afternoon is BZA 09-2020, 106 North 4th Street for Steve Daniels. Mr. Skinner, if you'll present this caption, please.
Before the Board of Zoning Appeals today is BZA 09-2020. The applicant, Steve Daniels, is requesting a variance to reduce the required yard setback from 10 feet to 5 feet for the construction of a new single-family dwelling. The property is identified as tax map 35F star LN star 23 and parcel 0509272200. The address is 106 North 4th Street, Suffolk, Virginia, Suffolk Voting Borough. Zoning classification, residential medium density RM. When you act upon this request, you will be acting on a request to reduce the minimum required setback from 10 feet to 5 feet in order to construct a single-family dwelling. Should the board decide in favor of approving this special exception, the 8 findings as listed in your package must be articulated as part of the motion.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Jennifer Cobb with the City of Suffolk Zoning Office. As previously stated, the applicant, Steve Daniels, is requesting a variance from the UDO from Article 4, Section 31407C, Table 4071, Dimensional Standards, to reduce the required side yard setback from 10 feet to 5 feet in order to construct the single-family dwelling. The property is 106 North 4th Street, and it is zoned RM. This variance request was advertised in the Suffolk News Herald. A notice was mailed to adjacent property owners in accordance with Section 15.2.2204 of the Code of Virginia. The public notice sign was posted on the property as well. In approving a variance, the board must find condition upon the applicant having acquired the property in good faith, that the applicant's situation is unique due to the particular physical surroundings, size, shape, and condition of the extraordinary situation, and not shared by other properties in the same zoning district or vicinity. The board must also find that the denial of the variance would result in undue hardship rather than an inconvenience, that the character of the district would not be changed as a result of granting the variance, and that the situation is not such of general nature that would require a text amendment to the zoning ordinance to achieve the compliance. The applicant stated in his application the property was acquired in good faith in order to build a single-family residence. The dimensional requirements for newly platted lots in the RM zoning district require lots to have a total land area of 10,000 square feet with a minimum street frontage of 60 feet and a minimum lot width of 80 feet measured at the front setback line. This lot is non-conforming in that it is approximately 3,300 square feet in area and 30 feet in width as illustrated on the physical survey. Hold on. Lot is located in the city's infill development area, which allows construction on non-conforming lots, which are a separate ownership and not of continuous frontage with other lots in the same ownership. The applicant does not own the property on either side of this lot. Per UDO Section 31801E1A2, the underlying zoning district minimum side yard setback requirements may be adjusted and reestablished and may be approved by the zoning administrator if findings show the request to be reasonable and necessary for particular use of the lot, but will not have any adverse effect on the adjacent property or surrounding neighborhood. The width of any newly constructed home shall not be less than 20 feet, and the new construction must conform in similarity to the mass, bulk, and building footprint of the existing houses on the same block. In improving setbacks, the proposed dwelling must meet the average front and side setbacks of existing buildings. The UDO section 31801EB further states that any modification of setbacks more than 30% shall require a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals. Due to the inability of the applicant to meet the infill development design standards of a 20-foot wide dwelling on a 30-foot wide lot without a variance on the side setbacks, zoning staff would therefore recommend approval of the request. And I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Cobb. Before we open the public hearing, are there any questions from board members to Ms. Cobb? Thank you. We will now open the public hearing. Who would like to speak on behalf of this application? Is there anyone present who would like to speak on behalf of this BZA application at 106 North 4th Street? If there's no one who would like to speak on behalf of the application, is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? No one present who would like to speak on behalf or opposition, we will close the public hearing. I turn to the board members for questions, comments, or a motion.
Ask Ms. Cobb a question.
Okay. Ms. Cobb?
Ms. Cobb, were there any building elevations that were submitted to you? That's the first question. And the second question is, are there any improvements that would come along with the construction of a home at this site? It's one of the most narrow sites I think we've looked at thus far.
There is no elevations. There were no elevations that were presented to me. I believe that further down the street, I think we had a 30-foot lot as well, requesting the 5-foot side yard setbacks on either side.
Okay.
Not today, no, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say.
No, not today, no, but previously we have.
Oh, Ms. Cobb is at the podium. Are there other questions?
Do they typically submit elevations? Is that practical or normal?
Not usually. I don't always get them. Sometimes I do.
Okay.
We will see in other cases I do, but not always.
Okay.
And are there other improvements that would be obviously taps for the site, but are there any, I think I know the answer to this, any other improvements that would come along with the construction of this house between the two other houses that exist? And you haven't heard from the adjacent property owners either?
I have not, no. And we mailed out adjacent property owner letters as well. I think there's a picture, actually, let's see, where is it? That's what the lot looks like now.
Right, any other questions to Ms. Cobb? Thank you, Ms. Cobb. All right, we've had the public hearing. No one spoke in favor of or in opposition to. And now we're back to members of the board for questions, comments, or a motion.
I make a motion to table this item for representation and to see an elevation of the product to be built.
All right, a motion from Board Member Venerable to table this for how many days? 30?
Like 30 days.
To table it for 30 days in order to have representation of the applicant for consideration. Is that correct? All right. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
All right, second from Board Member Eslick to table this application for 30 days until such time that a representative of the applicant can come forward to this board. Discussion of the motion.
Along with elevations.
Give us what we need to call for the vote now.
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Skinner, call for the vote, please.
Richard Eslick,
Yes.
Peter C. Jackson,
Yes.
Daniel Froman, Melissa Venable,
Yes.
Howard Benton.
Yes.
The motion passes.
All right, the motion has passed to table this application for 30 days. All right. Papers here. All right, our next public hearing this afternoon is BZA 10, 2020, 910 Carolina Road, James Thomas. Mr. Stanley, if you'll read the caption, please.
Before the Board of Zoning Appeals today is BZA 10-2020. The applicant, James Thomas, is requesting a variance to rebuild a detached garage and shed, which was damaged during a storm, and build it into two separate structures. The property is identified as tax map 44*52*10*11 and parcel 100708000, addressed as 910 Carolina Road, Suffolk, Virginia, Whaleyville Voting Borough. Zoning classification heavy industrial M2. When you act upon this request, you will be acting on a request to allow a variance to rebuild the detached garage and shed, which was damaged during a storm, into one building instead of two separate structures. Should the board decide in favor of approving this special exception, the 8 findings as listed in your package must be articulated as part of the motion.
As previously stated, the applicant, James Thomas, is requesting a variance from the UDO, Article 8, Section 31801FE, damage to deconstruction of a nonconforming structure, in order to rebuild a detached garage. The property is identified as 910 Carolina Road and is zoned M2, which is heavy industrial. This variance request was advertised in the Suffolk News Herald, and a notice was mailed to the adjacent property owners in accordance with Section 15.2.2204 of the Code of Virginia. A public notice sign was posted on the property as requested. Applicant is wishing to replace the destroyed 20.4 by 20.5 garage and 12 shed, attached shed, with a single detached structure measuring 22 by 30 feet in the same location. The applicant is attempting to reduce the nonconformity by replacing 2 buildings with one. The home was built in 1953 and was purchased in 2006 with the existing detached garage and shed already constructed. The legally nonconforming use as a single family would not be permitted in the M2 zoning district. Therefore, staff would recommend approval of this request. This is what was there previously. This is what they are trying to replace it with. And then these pictures depict the damage that was done to the structure from the tornado in last summer. And he did submit elevation, so this is what would be going back. Any questions you guys may have?
Thank you, Ms. Cobb. Are there any questions to Ms. Cobb from the board members? Thank you, Ms. Cobb. We will now open the public hearing. Who would like to speak on behalf of this application?
I'm James Thomas, the homeowner, and as Ms. Cobb stated, I'm trying to extend the current garage structure.
Excuse me, could you step at that podium, please? We're trying to keep.
All right, guess it's on.
Yes, sir.
So, yeah, the previous garage that was there, while it did have the detached shed on the back, which allowed for storage of lawn care equipment, et cetera, the garage itself was of size that, you know, at 20 feet, Basically, anytime I had to do any type of work on a vehicle, I had to complete the work that day, or I had to push the vehicle out of the garage to be able to secure it for the evening. It's too small to really, to do much with, other than storage. So to time any project, I mean, you had to take weather into consideration and, length of the job and everything else that I was doing on my personal property. So just request the board, I'd like to combine both of these buildings into one. It's 22 foot wide by 30 foot long, and it would be on the same location. And it's still at the back of the property. It's, as you come into the driveway, it's a circular driveway around the house, extending it to 10 feet forward that I'm asking. It doesn't impede, still driving around the house. It doesn't impede that driveway at all. I'm approximately 20 to 25 feet from the property line to the right of the building, to the neighbor's property line. So there's no impingement of any type of right-of-way or anything in that nature. Any questions back, or?
I mean, this is your moment to tell us what you want us to hear.
Well, I don't know how else to explain it. I'm just asking, like I said, asking for a permission to construct a garage that's, 10 feet deeper to allow me to use it as a garage, to get in and out of the weather when I need to do maintenance on a vehicle, or so the current zoning, as it's stated, you're supposed to go back with the same size or smaller structure. With the garage being 12 by 12, or the shed, and the garage being 20 by 20, I'm actually coming back a little smaller, but it's a different footprint, whereas the shed was 20 by 20 square, and then you had the 12 by 12 behind it. I'm actually going to move that just a little bit forward and do a 22 by 30 footprint. That makes sense.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak on behalf of this application? If not, is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? If not, we will now close the public hearing. I now turn to the board for questions, comments, or motion.
I'll make a motion for approval based upon the 8 findings that are listed in our package.
Motion for approval by Board Member Venerable. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Board Member Jackson. Discussion of the motion. Motion and second is for approval. Mr. Skinner, call the roll, please.
Richard Eslett,
Yes.
Peter C. Jackson,
Yes.
Daniel Froman, Melissa Venable,
Yes?
Howard Benton.
Yes.
The motion is approved.
Congratulations. All right. Our next item on the agenda is BZA 11-2020, 8580 Crittenton Road, Daniel Luva Jr. Mr. Skinner, if you'll present the caption, please.
Before the Board of Zoning Appeals today is BZA 11-2020. The applicant, Daniel Luva Jr., is requesting a variance to reduce the required rear yard setback from 30 feet to 10 feet, and the required side yard setback from 20 feet to 7 feet in order to convert an existing garage into a detached accessory dwelling unit. The property is identified as tax map 4*21B and parcel 253103,800. addressed as 850 Crenton Road, Suffolk, Virginia, Chuckatuck Voting Borough, classification rural residential RR. When you act upon this request, you will be acting on a request to allow a variance to reduce the required rear yard setback from 30 feet to 10 feet, and the required side yard setback from 20 feet to 7 feet in order to convert an existing garage into a detached accessory dwelling unit. Should the board decide in favor of approving this special exception, the 8 findings as listed in your package must be articulated as part of this motion.
As previously stated, the applicant Daniel Lavore Jr. is requesting a variance from the Unified Development Ordinance, Article 7, Section 31701B13A for accessory dwelling units must meet the primary dwelling unit setbacks. In order to utilize an existing detached garage as a detached accessory dwelling unit for an elderly family member, the applicant is asking to reduce the side yard setback from 20 feet to 7 feet and from the rear from 30 feet to 10 feet. The property is located at 8580 Crenton Road and is zoned RR Rural Residential. This variance request was advertised in the Suffolk News Herald, and a notice was mailed to adjacent property owners in accordance to Section 15.2.2204 of the Code of Virginia. The sign was also placed on the property. The applicant stated in their application they would be utilizing an existing detached garage to convert into living space for their elderly in-laws. The existing garage is under the permitted maximum square footage for a detached accessory dwelling unit and is permitted by right in the rural residential zoning district. The lot is conforming and meets the dimensional requirements in the rural residential zoning district. In order to meet the setback requirements, the applicant stated they would have to construct a new building, which would be a financial burden. The UDO Section 31801E1B further states any modification of the setbacks by more than 30% shall require a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals. Based upon the size of the lot and the information presented in the application, staff did not find any unique hardships faced by this property. I'm available for any questions you guys may have.
Thank you, Ms. Cobb. Are there any questions from the board members to Ms. Cobb while she's at the podium?
When the detached garage was placed, it required a variance at that point? When it was put up?
So in order to be a detached garage, just strictly storage, it can have the reduced setbacks of 5 in the rear and 5 on the side. But once we convert it into an detached accessory dwelling unit, then it has to meet the setbacks of the primary structure. So that's why we're here to do the reduction of the setbacks. Does that make sense?
So the setbacks change once the
Correct.
use changes?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
I had a question in regard to the detached garage. Was that built the same time as the house, or was that built later, and was a permit given on that detached garage in its location?
I am unsure if it was built at the same time of the home, but the permits were issued for that structure as storage unit, or as a storage structure, excuse me.
Okay.
If I may ask, as it exists, the garage is in compliance with setbacks
Correct.
as a garage, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Thank you for that clarification.
Just with the change of use, then it changes the setback requirements.
Any other questions from board members to Ms. Cobb?
I have one more question. If, with the accessory unit, it can only be used as a non-rental unit?
Correct. It can only be utilized as a non-rental, and it cannot exceed 1,000 square feet because that home is over the 2,000 square feet. So it cannot exceed 1,000 square feet as the maximum. So it meets those requirements, it
Okay.
just doesn't meet the setback requirements.
All right.
And let's, for clarification, we're not speaking about a rental, we're speaking about an in-law suite on the property.
Correct, yes.
Also, the improvements, they're on the front and the side, away from the side setback, the improvements to the existing structure? Am I reading that right?
Oh, yes, it's on the front,
Front and side.
yes.
It's the side away from the, say, neighbor's property line.
So yes, that is correct, where the little proposed bump out is.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board members while Ms. Cobb is at the podium? Thank you, Ms. Cobb. We will now open the public hearing. Who would like to speak on behalf of this application?
Good afternoon. My name's Daniel Lawver. I own the property, and I'm trying to build an in-law suite for my mother-in-law. It was my father-in-law and mother-in-law, but he passed away January 6th from COVID. And she's a very independent woman. She wants her own place. We try to talk her into staying in the house, and she wants her own place. There's actually no house on Crittenden Road next to my property on either side, but my house butts up to Governor's Point. There's actually an easement between my neighbor behind me and my property. I got a letter from my neighbor saying they didn't mind me building something there, but I would like permission to build this place for my mother-in-law. It is 600 foot. The garage is 600 square foot right now. We do want to add 150 square foot, but not towards the property line, back towards my house on the front side.
This is your moment to tell us what you want us to hear.
I'd like to have the approval to do so, to build a place for my in-laws, or my mother-in-law now.
Thank you, Mr. Lubia.
Thank you.
All right. Is it anyone else who would like to speak on behalf of this application? If not, is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? Not, Mr. Luba, did you wish to make any additional comments?
No, sir.
We will now close the public hearing. I turn to the members of the board for questions, comments, or motion.
I have a couple comments. I'm full of comments today. I have a couple comments. One, may we see the letter?
Yes, ma'am.
That would be wonderful. Two, just for full disclosure, I live in Governor's Point, and your mother-in-law has been a fabulous neighbor of ours. I don't live in close proximity, but I do live in Governor's Point.
Okay.
And I want to also thank you for letting us know the hardship that I think that your mother-in-law has been faced with. And I might be in contradiction to the report that is a hardship. And I wanted to go on record and making sure that that's noted to our board here, that they have suffered a great loss. That's all.
Were you requesting her letter?
Yes.
All right, pass that to Ms. Cobb, if you will.
I run it all
There are some
together, don't I?
pictures from Hastings Road from behind my place and from the neighbors that I got in there. There's a hedge on both sides. You can't even see the garage from from the neighborhood.
Thank you, sir.
Thank y'all.
Pass it on to Ms. Venerable.
Thank you.
I'd like to comment too, there is a hedgerow, and the garage is hidden from the people in Governor's Point. I agree with that, and I think that was done early on when Governor's Point was developed. That was part of the agreement, I think, between the developer and your in-laws.
Yes, sir.
So there was nobody that commented from Governor's Point, no adverse comment? Okay.
And I do believe you asked a question about the garage being built at the same time. The house was built in 86. I think the garage was built in 87.
I'm making a motion to approve the BZA 11-2020 application as presented. I feel, because it's blocked, and also the new building that's going to be done, it's not going to the side, into the side property line, it's in the front, and the other side of his acre or more. So, I feel like we should approve it.
Motion for approval from Board Member Jackson. Do I hear a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second from Board Member Eslick. Discussion of the motion. Motion and second for approval. Mr. Skinner, call for the vote, please.
Richard Eslick,
Yes.
Peter C. Jackson,
Yes. Yes.
Daniel Froman, Melissa Venable,
Yes.
Howard Benton.
Yes.
The motion is approved.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, if you want to reconnect with your pictures here before we leave, Ms. Cobb, if you'll come forward and get these. All right, our fourth and last public hearing this afternoon is BZA 01-2021, 311 Factory Street, Shea, Spain. Mr. Skinner, if you'll present the caption, please.
Before the Board of Zoning Appeals today is BZA 01-2021. The applicant, Chase Bain, care of Birdsong Peanut, is requesting a variance on the side and front setbacks and the height to repurpose an existing warehouse into a processing area. The applicant is requesting a side yard setback of .34 inches instead of the required 25 feet adjacent to an M2. The front setback of .52 inches instead of the required 30 feet, and a height variance of 72 feet instead of the permitted 75. The property is identified as 34G29, double parentheses 1, 34A, star 3, star 4, star 5, and parcel 3503-11000. The address is 311 Factory Street, Suffolk, Virginia, Whaleyville Voting Borough, zoning classification heavy industrial M2. When you act upon this request, you will be acting on a request to allow a variance to reduce the side yard setback of .34 inches instead of the required 25 feet adjacent to an M2, a front setback of .52 instead of the required 30 feet, and a height variance of 72 feet instead of the permitted 65 feet. Should the board decide in favor of approving this special exception, the 8 findings as listed in your package must be articulated as part of the motion.
As previously stated, the applicant, Chase Spain, is requesting a variance from the UDO, Article 8, Section 31801F2A, regarding nonconforming structures. The applicant is requesting a variance for the front and side setbacks, as well as a variance in height to repurpose an old existing warehouse into a processing center. The property is located at 311 Factory Street and is zoned M2 Heavy Industrial. This variance was also advertised in the Suffolk News Herald, and a notice was mailed to the adjacent property owners in accordance with Section 15.2.2204 of the Code of Virginia. The applicant is proposing to build within the footprint of the existing structure to reinforce the walls in order to convert the old warehouse into a processing center. Oops, let me go back. The current structure is non-conforming and currently sits at .34 inches from the front property line instead of the required 30 feet and .44 inches instead of the required 25 feet in the M2 zoning district. In order to repurpose the structure, the applicant is also requesting a variance to increase the maximum building height to 72 feet instead of the permitted 65 feet in the M2 zoning district. This proposed height is less than the height of the adjacent buildings on the site. Due to the inability to meet the required setbacks and the applicant attempting to make the structure less non-conforming by building within the footprint to stabilize the structure, as well as staying below the height of adjacent structures, staff recommends approval of this variance. I know it's hard to see the survey that shows what's currently there. This shows the elevations, that's the proposed vertical expansion, as well as the existing plants that's behind it, so you can see kind of the height variation. And then where's where the sign was posted. And I'm available for any questions you guys may have.
Thank you, Ms. Cobb. Are there any questions from the board members before we open the public hearing? A question I'll ask, and I think I probably already know the answer before I do, is the structure adequate for additional weight that's going to be added with the modifications?
I believe they're going to get a structural engineer to make sure all that part is taken care of. And they're here to answer the questions, other questions as far as building's concerned.
Thank you for that. All right. Any questions from board members while Ms. Cobb is at the podium? Thank you, Ms. Cobb. We will now open the public hearing. Who would like to speak on behalf of this application?
Good afternoon. Chairman and members of the board, my name is David Dahlman with Kimley Horn. Address is 4525 Main Street, Virginia Beach, Virginia. I'm here this afternoon on behalf of Birdsong Peanuts. We are asking for a variance to the setback and height requirements as previously discussed. Birdsong is working to continue to grow their business in the city of Suffolk. They are looking to add a new processing area that's directly adjacent to the existing processing area. So the existing processing area is basically the large tower you see there today. It's very important for the processing to be directly adjacent to the existing processing because the operations are going to work hand in hand. The existing processing area is a very old structure, so getting machinery in and out is very difficult. This new processing area is going to make that much easier, and the ability to maintain and continue to build their business in Suffolk. The height is really what is driving this because of the processing that they're doing. The height is required so they're not damaging their product. And if it wasn't for the height, we would be doing it all within the existing footprint, but the height is why we're here today. So that's what's got us into this variance process. We're creating more volume in the building, then we need to meet the current code for height and for setbacks. And so we're requesting a reduction in the setbacks for that reason. I have other folks with me here today. I have folks from Birdsong Peanuts themselves, and then the contractor, C.W. Brinkley, and I would open it to you guys if you want to make any comments. Thank you. Well, any questions? Happy to answer them, but we'll let these guys talk too.
Good afternoon. My name is Malcolm Birdsong. I'm Vice President of Engineering of Birdsong Peanuts. Just a little more detail of what we're trying to do. We are trying to improve the process that we do in Suffolk to meet customer needs. The reason we're asking to increase our cubic footage, which is our height, is what we like to do is we like to have holding capacity prior to the beginning of this circuit. And we like to try to stack our equipment on top of each other so one piece flows to the next. If we have to lift it and from one piece to the next repeatedly, we tend to get a lot of breakage and make specifications hard to meet for customers. The reason we are in this building is this process will flow into our existing building. Some equipment will stay in there, but what we are trying to do in this new building is something that will not fit in our plant today. We're taking a dry storage and we need to raise it in order to do the best job we can do there. Do y'all have any questions for me?
We'll save those until the end of the public hearing.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on behalf of this application?
Good afternoon. My name is J.P. Henry. I'm with C.W. Brinkley, and just to touch on the comment that was made, we've had the existing building reviewed by a structural engineer. Preliminarily, their analysis is that this expansion will work. That will obviously continue through and be stamped with the building permit process, but from a preliminary review standpoint, that has been completed. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on behalf of this application? If not, is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? If not, would either of you like to make any additional comments on behalf of this application?
No, sir.
If not, we will close the public hearing. I turn to the board members for questions, comments, or motion.
Based on the 8 findings within our package, I would make a recommendation for approval, and thank you for staying in the city of Suffolk and growing your business here.
Motion for approval by Board Member Venerable. Do I hear a second?
Second.
From Board Member Jackson. Motion and second for approval. Discussion of the motion. Mr. Skinner, call for the vote, please.
Mr. Esplick,
Yes.
Peter C. Jackson,
Yes.
Daniel Froman, Melissa Venable,
Yes.
Howard Benton.
Yes.
The motion is approved.
Thank you for that. Congratulations, and let me add, it makes us feel very good that apparently there is something healthy about the peanut industry in the city of Suffolk and something healthy about birdsong, the longevity of you being here. The city of Suffolk and Nansemond County for a long time labeled itself as the peanut capital of the world. And there was an era of time in which peanut companies literally closed and moved on. I think there was, maybe a total of about 13 at one time. Am I close to being correct in my number there? Quite a few. And I believe that birdsong is the sole processor of peanuts in Suffolk now. Is that correct? Thank you. But congratulations to you, and this is a plus for not only birdsong, but for the city of Suffolk. Thank you. All right. According to my agenda, that concludes our business this afternoon, our public hearings. I'm not aware of any new business. Is there any matter that needs to come before us that has not been addressed? I do believe this means that we will have a March meeting because we tabled the first application. Let me turn to Mr. Skinner. Is that correct? We will have a March meeting. All right. If there's no other business or comments, we stand adjourned. Thank you for your participation.